The rain was beating against the window panes as Miriam Roth sank wearily onto the sofa. It was another day she had barely left her apartment. The apartment building on Buckenstrange was supposed to be her refuge, at least it used to be. But for several weeks now, the 32-year-old no longer felt safe within her own four walls. It had all started innocently enough. An anonymous bouquet of flowers left at her door, eerie messages on her phone, doors that seemed to be open at night, even though she had locked them securely. At first, Miriam had thought it was all a coincidence, a bad joke. But the messages became more personal, the calls more threatening. Today, there was another envelope in her mailbox. No sender, just her name in large block letters. With trembling fingers, Miriam opened the envelope. Inside was a cell phone photo of her taken through the kitchen window last night while she stood at the stove. On the back, it read, "I see you, always." Fear crawled up Miriam's spine like cold water. She rushed to the window. Nothing, just the courtyard in the rain, a few pale street lamps, empty garbage bins. Miriam grabbed her phone and dialed the police. Her voice shook. "I'm being followed. For weeks. Someone is close to me. Please, help me." Later that evening, there was a knock at her door. Detective Martin Reuter introduced himself, middle-aged, calm eyes, steady voice. He took his time, listened, asked precise questions about the incidents, and had Miriam show him the messages and photos, while forensics examined Miriam's apartment. Reuter leaned against the hallway window and gazed out into the rain-soaked darkness. "Ms. Roth, do you have any suspicions? One from the building? Someone close to you?" Miriam shook her head. "My ex-boyfriend, Lars, may be. We had a bad breakup, but that would be sick." Reuter took notes. He knew how unpredictable human obsession could be. Around midnight, the police discovered traces at Miriam's window, tiny scratches on the glass, as if someone had held up a microphone or installed a camera. No fingerprints, but remains of adhesive tape. The neighbor, Daniela Fuchs, in her mid-40s, suddenly appeared in the hallway. "Is everything all right with you?" "I saw the police." Miriam hesitated, but Reuter invited her in. Daniela spoke of strange noises over the past few nights and mentioned that her own mail had been opened. "Maybe these things are connected," she murmured. Reuter recorded all the clues. In his mind, a pattern was already forming. The perpetrator knew the building had access to Miriam's window. It's technically skilled personal connection, likely, as Reuter said goodbye. He placed a reassuring hand on Miriam's shoulder. "We'll stay on it. And you won't be alone." Miriam nodded. But as the door clicked shut behind the detective, her phone began to ring again, an anonymous number. No words, just her own breathing, distorted and amplified. Outside, the rain rushed down. In the hallway, someone seemed to be waiting. The morning began like any other. Outside, fog hung thick over the city, droplets gathering on the windowsill. Miriam Roth sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug, as if she could hold on to the last warmth of the night. She had barely slept, waking every hour, always with the feeling of being watched. Her gaze drifted to the kitchen window, the one where she'd been photographed the previous evening. The curtains were drawn now, but she still didn't feel safe. Soft music played on the radio. The news reported a fire in another district, the economic situation, the upcoming mayoral election. All of it seemed to come from a distant world that no longer had anything to do with her own life. For weeks now, she had felt like she was in the wrong movie. What she was experiencing didn't fit with the everyday life she had always wanted. She forced herself to get up, to get ready, even though she would have rather pulled the covers over her head. In the hallway, she met her neighbor, Daniela Fuchs, who was carrying a laundry basket down to the basement. Daniela looked tired, but her smile was sincere. "Morning, Miriam. Did you at least get some sleep?" Miriam shook her head. "Not really. It's actually getting worse. I feel like whoever it is is getting bolder. Daniela nodded sympathetically. If you like, we can have dinner together tonight. It's better not to be alone. Miriam was grateful for the offer. Daniela was one of the few people she still trusted. She resolved to talk to some of the other neighbors. Maybe someone had seen or heard something. The thought of taking action made her feel at least a little less helpless. In the stairwell, she ran into Felix Shaw, the building manager. As always, he was neatly dressed, his briefcase casually in hand. "Good morning, Ms. Roth. I saw the police at your place last night. Is there a problem?" His voice was friendly, but there was something in his eyes Miriam couldn't quite read. She hesitated, then told him in broad strokes about the incidents. Felix listened carefully. "That's terrible. If you need help with security, or if you notice anything, let me know. We should all look out for each other in this building." He gave her an encouraging nod and disappeared toward the basement. Miriam thought about the encounter for a long time. Felix had always been helpful, taking care of repairs, helping elderly tenants with their mail. But in recent weeks, he had been in the building late at night, more often with a toolbox and flashlight. Was that suspicious, or was she just getting overly sensitive by now? Later, at the police station, Detective Reuter and Chief Inspector Jürgen Voss sat together, going over the investigation results so far. The messages to Miriam had been sent with technical skill, anonymous numbers, encrypted emails, sender addresses that were almost impossible to trace. Some of the messages had even come directly from the building as open. WIV, someone here really knew what they were doing. Reuter requested the list of residents. Besides Miriam and Daniela, there were 7 other parties living in the building, a young family, 2 retirees, and a student among them. Additionally, Felix Shaw, as building manager, had a master key and with it, access to all the apartments in the basement at any time. Initial suspicion fell on Lars Backer, Miriam's ex-boyfriend. They had broken up 3 months ago. The relationship had been difficult at the end. Lars, an IT specialist, seemed nervous during questioning. "I have nothing to do with this psychological terror," he insisted. The breakup was hard, but I would never try to scare Miriam. Reuter had him show his computers and phones, checked emails, chat logs, call histories. Everything seemed clean, no sign of threats or stalking. Still, Lars couldn't provide a solid alibi for several of the nights in question. Meanwhile, Daniela showed up at the police station and handed Reuter a small black USB stick. "I found this in the basement this morning, right next to the fuse box. I thought it might be important." Reuter and his team checked the stick immediately. It contained several short video clips recorded with a small camera, obviously placed near the basement door. The footage showed different tenants going down to the basement and Miriam, one evening, taking a trash bag downstairs. But Felix Shaw also appeared several times, mostly late at night, and often for longer than anyone else. Reuter requested access to the technical rooms. The basement rooms were old, the light dim. At the back was a small, hardly noticed side room originally intended for heating repairs. Here, forensics found remains of electrical tape and packaging for small electronic components. Back at the office, a technician analyzed the USB stick. The videos are from a standard mini camera. The power was probably supplied from the fuse box. Anyone with a bit of electrical knowledge could do that. The camera must have been removed only a few days ago. In the early afternoon, Reuter met with Felix Shaw in his office. Felix was sorting files when Reuter entered. "Mrs. Shaw, we found a hidden camera in the basement. Do you know anything about it?" Felix looked surprised. "No, I don't know anything about that. Cameras in the basement? That's illegal. Privacy laws and all. Psst, who would do such a thing?" Reuter watched him closely. Felix's hands trembled slightly. Was it the nervousness of an innocent man or of someone caught? "Have you noticed any suspicious people in the building or the basement recently?" "Not really. Except maybe the handyman who was here for the heating the other day. But otherwise?" Reuter made a note. He knew how easily false leads could be laid. In the early evening, Miriam returned home from work. On her way up the stairs, she heard quiet voices from the basement. She stopped, listened, but could only catch a few fragments of words. As she cautiously went down the basement steps, the voices fell silent. A shadow flitted past the light. Miriam trembled, but didn't dare go further, so she turned back to her apartment. She found a new note pushed under her door. "You are never alone." This time, the handwriting was different, more scrawled, almost childlike. She called Daniela's number. "Daniela, something happened again. I don't know what to do anymore." Daniela was with her right away, brought tea, and sat with Miriam. "You can't let this get to you. That's exactly the goal, to make you afraid, to make you withdraw. We'll get through this together." Miriam was grateful, but the fear remained. Detective Reuter, meanwhile, stood at a board in the police station, covered with photos of the tenants, timelines, locations, and clues. Who had the technical skills to use the Wi-Fi, install cameras, and send the threats? Who had access to the basement, the hallway, the apartments? Why were there no direct demands, just psychological terror? He had all the background information on Felix Shaw and Lars Becker checked. Nothing indicated a criminal record, but both had the means to move around the building without attracting attention. That night, Miriam woke up again. She heard someone quietly fiddling with her apartment door lock. Her heart raced. She grabbed her phone and called Reuter, who had promised to be available at any time. "Detective, someone's at my door again," she whispered. "Okay." Reuter immediately alerted the nearest patrol. By the time the officers arrived, no one was there but once again. The locks showed fine scratches, as if someone had tried to open them. At dawn, Miriam sat by the window, staring into the gray, empty courtyard. Tears ran down her face. The boundary between her home and the threat outside had disappeared. For Detective Reuter, the clues were converging. The perpetrator was tech-savvy, knew the building, knew the people. He was playing a dangerous game, and the fear was only growing. November remained gray and heavy. The days blurred together, and Miriam moved only between work and her apartment, constantly accompanied by the fear of being followed. Her phone kept vibrating with new anonymous messages. "You can't outsmart me. Every move you make is my secret." Detective Reuter and Chief Inspector Voss sat at headquarters the next morning. The video clips from the USB stick, the monitoring of the building's Wi-Fi, and conversations with the residents all came together into a complex picture. Yet the perpetrator remained like a shadow, everywhere and nowhere. New clues from the tech team, the police IT experts, once again analyzed traces from the Wi-Fi. Time and again, they found a router with manipulated settings. Someone had spoofed MAC addresses to cover their tracks. Officially, only Felix Shaw had access to the router, but in theory, any technically savvy resident could have hacked the system. Reuter asked Daniela Fuchs once more to describe what she had observed in the building over the past weeks. Daniela reported nighttime noises in the hallway, cables that were routed differently than before, and a strange smell of burnt plastic, as if someone had secretly tampered with the fuses. "Do you think the perpetrator is from the building?" she asked quietly. Reuter considered. "It's very likely. It's too many coincidences. And he has access to rooms not open to everyone." Lars Becker. Suspicion and exoneration suspicion still rested on Lars Becker. He was summoned again, this time confronted with new evidence. Hidden messages were found in his old cloud account, apparently from Miriam Stalker. A Penenesis revealed that Lars' access had been compromised weeks ago. Someone had used his identity to plant false leads. He looked shaken. "I really have nothing to do with this. Someone is trying to frame me." Reuter believed him. The pattern was too technical, too sophisticated for it to be a simple revenge act by an overwhelmed ex-boyfriend. Ken and threat late that evening. Miriam was once again targeted. When she returned home, she found her apartment door ajar. Inside, Everything seemed untouched, except her computer screen was flickering. On the desktop was a new file. I am always one step ahead. Displayed below was a live feed from the building's hallway, obviously from a hidden camera. Miriam screamed and called Reuter. The police arrived immediately, searched the apartment, but found no clear evidence. Once again, the perpetrator had deleted all digital traces, everything professionally concealed. Yet, in a moment of silence, after all the officers had left, Miriam received another message. You're too late. Not even your friend, the detective, can save you. Now, Reuter was personally affected. The next day, he received a threatening video on his work email showing himself near the building from an angle that could only come from a surveillance camera in the technical room. Reuter realized the perpetrator had access to nearly every area of the building. Someone was toying with them, someone who was closely watching their investigation. Felix Shaw, under pressure, the investigation now focused on Felix Shaw. Reuter and Voss confronted him in his office. Mr. Shaw, we have indications that someone from building management accessed the internal systems. Your presence at key locations has been documented several times. Can you explain this? Felix laughed nervously. I'm the manager. Of course, I have to check things regularly. But do you seriously think I'd have time to stage something like this? His alibi was why too many late-night, unexplained visits in the building. When Reuter spoke with Miriam again, they discovered an email in her inbox from an unknown friend. I know where you sleep. Trust no one. They all lie. Daniela, the neighbor, had by now become Miriam's most important ally. Together, they developed an idea. Miriam should post a sign of life on social media and pretend she was going to stay with her mother for a few days. Maybe that would lure the perpetrator out. A trap and a dangerous plan. Reuter installed hidden cameras in the building, monitoring all entrances and exits. That night, they spotted a suspicious figure in the basement, masked, wearing gloves. But before the police could catch them, the shadow disappeared through a side exit. The next morning, the basement door was found forced open. In the technical room, investigators discovered a makeshift Wi-Fi repeater, allowing the perpetrator to tap into the entire house network. Whoever it was didn't just have access, they had total control over the house's communication, power, lighting, and surveillance. Suddenly, Miriam received one last, urgent message. Tonight, you'll find out what it really means to be alone. Reuter sensed the climax was near. He had the building sealed off, called for backup, and prepared for the final confrontation. The sky above the city was black when Detective Reuter arrived on Buckenstreich shortly after midnight. Despite the late hour, the building felt wide awake. A nervous buzz hung in the air. Police cars were parked at both ends of the street. Plainclothes officers positioned themselves discreetly at the entrance. Everyone waited for a signal. On the third floor, Miriam Roth was curled up on her sofa. Next to her sat Daniela Fuchs, silently holding a cup of tea. The hours leading up to the night had dragged on. There was police protection. Miriam's fear now ran deeper than the beam of the flashlight that kept flickering in the hallway. Every noise made her flinch. She thought of all the days she'd unknowingly let the stalker get so close. Daniela tried to reassure her. It's almost over, Miriam. The police are everywhere. This time, they'll catch him. But her voice trembled. She too was uncertain how much protection four walls could really provide. The attack just before midnight, an alarm went off in the basement movement in the technical room. Reuter, Chief Inspector Voss, and two other officers rushed down the stairs, their steps echoing on the cold stone tiles. The hallway smelled of damp laundry and metal. They found the door to the technical room ajar. Inside, the harsh light of the neon tubes was blinding. Faint clicking, typing on a keyboard, and then the silhouette of a person hunched over a laptop. Reuter entered the room, his hand raised. Police. Stay calm and turn around slowly. The figure jerked up in shock, glanced over their shoulder, grabbed a gym bag, and bolted toward the side exit. Voss blocked away. A brief, wild struggle broke out. Then the officers had the person pinned to the ground. The mask slipped off. Glasses and hood fell away. Underneath, Felix Shaw. The building manager was breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. Felix Shaw, you are under arrest on suspicion of stalking, trespassing, data manipulation, and psychological abuse of tenants, said Reuter firmly. Felix no longer resisted. It's the evidence under the neon lights. The police searched the room. On the floor were notebooks, several cell phones, a bundle of SIM cards, and an open dossier containing photos of Miriam, newspaper clippings, and copied emails. The laptop displayed a dozen open windows, live access to the building's cameras, technical schematics, a program to control the internet connection, and a log of every movement in the house. You had control over the entire building, Voss murmured as he skimmed through the notes. Why all this, Mr. Shaw? Felix was on the verge of tears, his voice thin. Because I could, because no one noticed, because I was always just the manager, and for the first time, I had control. Forensics searched Felix's attic apartment. In his closet, they found more hard drives, memory cards, and technical devices, routers, hidden cameras, microphones, all carefully labeled, sorted by apartment and resident. In a metal box were old calendars and notebooks. For years, Felix had meticulously documented the lives of the tenants. Who shopped when, who received visitors, what conversations took place in the hallway. The interrogation at headquarters. The interrogation lasted until morning. Felix Shaw was exhausted, his gaze empty as he finally began to speak. At first, it was just curiosity. I observed how anonymous people can be in a place like this. People talk, but they don't really look at each other. Then came the cameras, first in the communal areas. Nobody asked what I was doing. Then the cell phones, the emails. It became a game. I could control everything. His voice broke, became angry, and no one noticed, not even when I chose Miriam. She was perfect, so withdrawn, so vulnerable. I wanted to see what would happen if I controlled everything. Her fears, her friends, her messages. It was as if I had the whole house in my hands. Reuter looked at him for a long time. And what about Lars Becker? You manipulated evidence against him? Felix nodded. I hacked his Wi-Fi, sent messages in his name. That was easy. He was supposed to be the culprit. Then I wanted to go a step further. Even you, detective, were supposed to feel what it's like to be watched. The investigators laid all the evidence before Felix. The access to Miriam's apartment, the manipulation of the Wi-Fi, the spy cameras, the fake threatening letters, the deliberate isolation of the victim. Everything was planned and carried out with technical precision. Felix broke down in tears. I'm sorry. I didn't know how far I would go. It was like a current, and then I was in too deep. The aftermath. Early in the morning, Felix was taken away. The house was quiet. Officers removed cameras, secured evidence, explained to the tenants what had happened. For many, it was a shock. The friendly routine with which Felix had been present all those years was shattered overnight. Miriam and Daniela still sat in the apartment. The police had informed them the danger was over. But Miriam felt no relief, only deep exhaustion, as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. She stared at her phone, at the messages still stored there. She kept asking herself, should I have noticed something sooner? Did I do something wrong? Daniela took her hand. It's not your fault. No one expects to be betrayed like this. It could have happened to anyone. Miriam nodded, but the sense of safety was gone. The apartment, the building, even her daily life felt changed. It would take a long time for her to trust again, not just others, but herself. Take the consequences. In the days that followed, technicians inspected the building. All passwords and locks were changed. Police offered psychological support to the residents. Many sought conversation, talked about their fears, their mistrust about the fracture in the building's community. The landlord promised to place more importance on privacy and security in the future. Detective Reuter wrote in his final report, "Stalking is not a crime of passion, but of control." Technology today makes it easier than ever to secretly gain power over the lives of others. Prevention, vigilance, and open communication remain the most important means to stand up to such shadows. He met with Miriam one last time in the hallway, once all traces had been removed. "How are you?" he asked. Miriam thought for a moment. "I don't know. I'm still alive. But I'm not the same anymore. Maybe that's the price you pay for living in the shadows." Reuter nodded. "You were brave. You made it through. You're not alone." As he left the building, the morning fog lay over the street. In his rearview mirror, he saw Miriam standing at the window. Her expression was thoughtful, but no longer just fearful, more alert, determined. Maybe that was the first step back into the light.